I would like to ask a very practical question. A couple of these were sent in concerning children. Somebody writes, how do I explain to my 2 or 3-year-old the concept of God? Or what do I say when she asks me, what is Allah? What analogies might I use? And then on a related note, not exactly on the same point, but related to children, somebody writes, why is it that you think children are just accepting of God? I know it is fitrah, but can you please elaborate? Is it because they haven't reached the age of full intellectual development?
I would say, first of all, children have no taklif at all, none. They learn more from observing you at that age than they learn from anything that you happen to say to them, unless it's said with aggression or something like that. I mean, children are they are much more in their sensory world than they're in the world of meaning. And the ghulam, if you look at the root word of it, it means to lust, which indicates that the infant is in a sensory, they're not in a meaning experience of the world. Doesn't mean that they don't have, there's meanings being imbibed as well, but their dominant mode, because they've come from the realm of meaning, and they have to deal with all this sensory stuff first. So the apparatus for the first 12 years is to actually just learn to be in the world. That's why it's grasping, putting things in their mouth and tasting and touching, and they'll look and do these things. And there's a reason why they're doing all that, because they're literally coming into the world, and you'll see them sometimes they do these amazing, like when they're like 1 or 2, they'll do these funny movements, and you realize they're literally they're programmed to, it's like when you boot up a computer. They're doing all that booting up. They're getting it all ready. The whole point is it's all preparation for what we've been talking about today. It's to become knowers of God. And that's why He's given them everything. Just let them be who they are. Let them fulfill their divine purpose. And don't get in the way too much. Because they're born already in the fitrah, and it's the parents that mess them up. Muslims have this idea like, إنما كل مولود ولد على الفطرة وإنما أبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو يمجسانه. It's like we don't fall into those 3 categories. It's not true. Those are archetypes. Muslims do that as well. We turn our children into those archetypes. They might be Muslim, but they'll have those deviations. A lot of Muslims, I think, really misunderstand the meaning of that hadith. Because if you look at the Muslim world now, I don't see a fitrah condition. I really see a lot of very dysfunctional people, and I'm not saying that this society, this is a pretty dysfunctional planet right now, and it has been for some time. And we're dealing with human nature. So that's a problem, because human nature is a constant. You always have the same obstacles in every generation. But many societies, and many of the pure societies that have existed in our history of Bani Adam, people have been very successful at raising and nurturing human beings to become human beings, and we're not as good at it. So I would just say a lot of it is just really letting them just come into their bodies and become human, and they have all the tools, and they need more than anything the examples from the parents. That's what they need. At a certain age, my child asked me when he was 6 years old, and I'll never forget this, he said to me, what's the highest number? And I said to him, there is no highest number, because any number that you can think of, you could always add 1 to it and make it more. So the next morning, this was a day later, he said to me, I think you're wrong. And I said, well, about what? And he said, about the numbers. He said, there has to be a highest number, but only Allah knows it.
SubhanAllah.
And he was 6 years old, and that's a true story. That is some intuitive knowledge. Many children have intuitive knowledge about reality, and children are very in touch with the unseen world. It's much more real to them because they're not that far away from it, for one. When you see some little children go into these ecstatic states, I've seen this in many babies, usually before they're 1 year old. They go into these just states of ecstasy, and you just wonder what they're seeing. Sidi Abdul Aziz Al-Fasi, he said that children can understand the angels, and actually they hear angelic voices and things like that. Allahu Alam, I haven't seen any hadith or anything, but he was a very righteous man, and that certainly makes sense to me just in my experience, and Allah knows best. So I would just say that children are deeply spiritual, and they're also deeply bestial. I mean, they have a horrible, this is what we call childish, right? Childish and childlike. We have two words to describe children. Childish is very negative, and childlike is very positive. It's all the beauty of children. It's the innocence. It's the purity. It's all those wonderful things that the Prophet ﷺ, the smell of children, he said that they smelt of paradise. You take a child and just, when they're really young, they have this beautiful smell of just being in that pure state. So all of that is the beauty of but those bestial aspects need to be also dealt with, and that's part of the humanizing process of the selfishness. I, me, mine. This thing, that's mine, and hitting and teaching them about sharing and things like that. And some children, it's unusual, but there are genuinely children that are extremely selfless from early on. They don't have that I, me, mine thing, and they actually don't have that. They share and they do that.
One of the questions was, if your 2 or 3 year old asks you, what is Allah?
Yeah.
What is a good answer?
Well, I think basically tell them the truth. He made us. Allah made us. He sees everything we do. He knows everything we do. His presence is here in His knowledge. He's present with us in His knowledge. And if they ask you where He is, we say He created place. He made place. His awareness is everywhere in His knowledge. He has no fixed place.